The Heat are streaking 2 straight wins, including Saturday night showdown versus the Charlotte Hornets, who stepped up in the blowout win for Miami. Plus, we explore the latest report of Omer Yurtseven and the changes to the roster, and a possible trade for Jae Crowder that includes Max Strus. We break it all down on today's Locked On Heat.
You are Locked On Heat, your daily Miami Heat podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, welcome to Locked On Heat, your daily podcast on the Miami Heat. However you might be tuning in on YouTube, Odyssey, or on your favorite podcast app. Thank you for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. I'm Wes Goldberg here with David Ramil. Today's episode is brought to you by LinkedIn. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates that you want to talk to faster. Post your jobs for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNBA. The Miami Heat beat the Hornets 135-115 on Saturday thanks to one of the best third quarters in franchise history. After going into halftime down 2, the Heat scored 25 points in the first 5 minutes of the second half and ended up outscoring the Hornets 45-25 in the third quarter. That's tied for the 6th highest scoring quarter in franchise history. So a lot of credit cookies to hand out. We'll also get to the Max Strus trade rumors and a potential Omer Yurtseven replacement. But before we do that, David, what stood out to you about Miami's offense in that third period?
Just the constant fluidity. It just felt like it was the identity that they've been looking for all year. So much of every game, it seems like, and I know this is a point that I want to say Ira Winterman made yesterday, but we've made it on the show several times, which is that every possession seems like just so much goddamn work for this Heat team. And it's just, whether it's because of a mismatch on size or the fact that they don't have the quote-unquote talent or the pure score a la KD or somebody along those lines, it's always working to just get 2 points if they're lucky. And more often than not, they wind up struggling offensively as a result. That third quarter was the exact opposite. It seemed like nothing they did went wrong. Everything went right. It was pure beauty, just poetry in motion constantly. That's what I stood. I mean, from being there at the arena on press row, watching these shots, shot after shot after shot falling, it just felt like this was the best version of this Heat team. This was the version that we've been looking for all year long.
16 of 21 on field goal attempts. That included 6 of 9 from three-point range. 8 different players scoring in that third quarter. That's exactly the movement is what stood out. The easy looks, the way that offense just kept humming and generated easy looks for everybody. Max Strus being a playmaker, Bam Adebayo being a playmaker, especially on that short roll, kicking out to Caleb Martin, kicking out to Kyle Lowry, Jimmy Butler finding a corner 3 at one point in that 5-minute stretch. Jimmy Butler cutting to the basket and Max Strus delivering, I think, the best pass of his career to Jimmy Butler cutting under the basket. And none of that stuff was a coincidence. It was everybody just working together to make it work. It wasn't just like a Dallas Mavericks or like a Golden State Warriors third quarter where Steph Curry just makes 6 straight three-pointers or Luka Doncic just is unstoppable for 4 to 5 straight minutes. This was everybody working in concert to make it happen.
2014 San Antonio Spurs. That's basically what it was.
Great example. I looked at some of the numbers kind of going bigger picture because, again, the Heat scored in large part because of the 45-point third quarter, 135 points in the game, which was a season high for them offensively. And I was just like looking, do the numbers show any dramatic difference? Because the eye test tells you this team is moving better, they're passing better than they had basically all season long. I wondered if, because NBA.com does track some of this data, against the Charlotte, or I'll go with the season averages initially. The season average for the Miami Heat, miles traveled per game, 18.08 miles traveled as a team per game. That means just running around the court, cutting, kind of coming around screens, all that kind of stuff is included in that number. 315.2 passes per game on average for Miami. Against Charlotte, the miles increased from 18.08 to 18.2, so slightly, but an increase. And then the passes went from 315.2 to 318. So a slight increase, but an increase. What that tells me is that what Eric Spoelstra had been saying all season long, kind of echoing the, hey, just repeating, we're close, we're close, we're close. That is close, but it is better. You also include the 8 box outs on average. this season. 11 box outs against Charlotte. So just a team that's working a little bit harder, cutting on a couple more possessions, boxing out a little bit stronger on those rebounds, passing, just making that extra pass a couple extra times throughout the game can make all the difference and kind of just turn the floodgates on. Of course, not missing any shots is helpful. The Heat had been missing a ton of open looks all season long. Eric Spoelstra also saying, hey, those looks are eventually going to go in. Max Strus, Gabe Vincent, all those guys getting huge contributions from them. The shots start going in. That obviously helps, but it helps when just offensively you're working just a little bit harder. It has such a dramatic effect, I think.
Yeah. Well, let's get into doling out some of those credit cookies, because I feel like so many players stood out. When you were referencing the miles traveled, that was just for Saturday's win, not including Thursday's win over the Hornets.
Just Saturday's win. So, yeah, just the Saturday win against the Hornets. So, specifically kind of trying to zoom in on what happened in that third quarter. Let's do the credit cookies. Do we want to give out a specific kind of credit cookie?
Yes, okay. I've got one. Everybody loves Oreo cookies, right? They're great cookies. They're fantastic. And last night's win was reminiscent of those victories that everybody's looking for, that Heat fans have been craving so much. But they're not quite Oreo cookies. They're great value, twist and shout. Chocolate sandwich cookies. Not quite an Oreo cookie. Thanks, Walmart. Just a sort of kind of knockoff. It was over the Charlotte Hornets. So it's all the great taste of an Oreo cookie, but kind of sort of not really.
The Charlotte Hornets are the knockoff brand of NBA teams, is what you're telling me. I love it. Look, there's so many credit cookies to give out. We only have 10. We could give so many out to so many different players. I'm just going to, right from the top, I'm giving two cookies to 5 different players. I think you would probably agree with me on that. Just sort of a balanced effort. No?
No.
Is the first one you want to...
Four to Max Strus.
No, that's too many. Give me the Max Strus.
Points?
31 points, 11 of those 31 in the third quarter. He was amazing, but why does he get more cookies than Jimmy Butler, Bam Adebayo, Kyle Lowry, Gabe Vincent? I'm willing to hear the argument.
I just think maybe it was the prisoner of the moment or the emotions of the crowd and things of that sort, but Strus's shots felt so much more impactful. Like there was more steady, great performances from everybody else. They're all going to get their cookies. They're all getting their touches. At the same time, it just felt like Max's shots in particular were the kind of just desperate 3-point shots that the Heat team needed in order to help distance them even further from the Hornets. Like I made a point on Twitter how important it was for Miami to build a double-digit lead early on and to be able to continue building that, because that's just what good teams do. They beat up on bad teams when they have the opportunity. And I thought that Max's performance was a big part of that. Helped stretching an 8-point lead to an 11-point lead, an 11-point lead to a 14-point lead, and so on. I think his points came at times when Miami needed those more. And I think it was his offensive impact that helped ease Miami into a blowout victory.
I want to give Max Strus more cookies. Let's talk through this and just figure out who we're taking cookies away from then, because I think I know where you're going to go with this. Jimmy Butler has to get at least 2 cookies. 10 of his 20 points in the third quarter. He was just as big as Max Strus during that third quarter run. Overall, he finished with 20 points, 7 rebounds, 8 assists, and a steal.
Great
he
numbers.
was awesome. Just 20 points on 6 of 8 shooting, only the way that Jimmy Butler can do it. Mostly a bunch of them coming at the free throw line. 2 cookies to him.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
Bam Adebayo, I wanted to give him 2 cookies, 7 points, 7 rebounds, 24 points overall. 7 and 7 in that third quarter run. 24 points, 15 rebounds overall. Perfect balance of just doing it all defensively, picking his spots offensively. I wanted to give 2 cookies to him. 2 cookies to Kyle Lowry. 5 assists in that third quarter. That was his playmaking.
That's where I'm off.
Really? 12 points, 11 rebounds, 8 assists for the game. He was so big in setting up the offense in that third quarter. I thought he was instrumental in that run. I thought he was as important as anybody else.
Maybe. As a playmaker, I can't.
Max
take
Strus
the 5
needed
or
somebody
12.
to make the plays for him, right? Max Strus isn't really a guy getting his own shot off. Kyle Lowry was a big part of making that possible.
Yes and no. Like, I mean, there were some opportunities there, but I see that point. I just felt like the 5 of 12 shooting, as good as he was as a playmaker, you could have just, you know what? I can see it. I'll
Do you want to take 1 cookie away from him and give 1 to Strus, which would give Kyle Lowry 1 cookie and Strus 3 cookies?
That's fair. And then Gabe Vincent, I think, deserves a couple cookies.
2 cookies to Gabe Vincent, 20 points overall, 7 of 13, 3 of 8 from 3-point range. He was awesome.
Actually, can I put a little caveat there? I want to give 1.5 to Gabe because he was phenomenal. I want to give half a cookie to Dwayne Dedman if I can. It seemed like he had a very clearly defined anti-Plumlee agenda. Like he did not want to get shown up by that white kid whatsoever. Like he just like he swatted his shot so completely, erased him at the rim.
Yeah.
It just felt like there was definitely something personal there, or like I don't know what it was, but he's
been playing really well lately too. Dwayne Dedman has. We don't. This is like the second or third time you've asked about half cookies. That makes the math as we keep the log all season very difficult. And I'm not great at math. Like just doing whole numbers out of 10 is
1.5 for Graham.
hard.
1.5.
Dwayne Dedman gets a shout out. That's his version of half a cookie. 2 cookies to Gabe Vincent. We're not giving him half a cookie. Can't do it. All right. Why haven't the Heat traded for Jae Crowder yet? That's because the Suns have been asking for way too much. We'll tell you what it is next. But first, today's episode of Locked On Heat is brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs. These days, every new potential hire can feel like a high-stakes wager for your small business. You want to be 100% certain that you have access to the best qualified candidates available. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs helps find the right people for your team faster and for free. Like hiring a great producer for your podcast or the assistant who makes your day-to-day that much easier, there's nothing like making that perfect hire to help your business. That's why you need to check out LinkedIn Jobs, which makes it incredibly easy to create a free job post. Plus, you can add your job post and the purple #hiring frame to your LinkedIn profile to spread the word that you're hiring. Simple tools like screening questions make it easy to focus on candidates with just the right skills and experience so you can quickly prioritize who you'd like to interview and then hire. It's why small businesses rate LinkedIn Jobs #1 in delivering quality hires versus the leading competitors. So if you still need to hit your annual goals, get some help around the holidays, or close out your final round of KPIs, LinkedIn Jobs can help you end the year right. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates that you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedonnba. That's linkedin.com/lockedonnba to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. All right, back here with Locked On Heat. We're going to get to Omer Yurtseven's potential replacement here in a minute. But first, thank you for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. For your next listen, check out the Locked On Sports Today podcast, the biggest stories of the day, plus instant reactions, big game recaps, and the take of the day. It's available on the Odyssey app, YouTube, wherever you get your podcasts. As the Suns begin re-engaging teams on Jae Crowder and a potential trade there, the Heat are already known to be an interested suitor. However, according to Ian Begley of SNY, the Suns are asking for Max Strus in a deal, which has been a non-starter for Miami, understandably so. David, should the Heat include Max Strus in a deal that lands Crowder?
Absolutely not. I think at this point, he just provides too much great value. We've talked about this before. I even talked about it in terms of his, while you were out. I don't think he's a solution. I really don't. Like, if he gets bought out and you can find a way to waive a player or clear some cap space or clear a roster spot in order to acquire him, that's fine. I don't see Jae Crowder as being a significant enough upgrade, despite the positional need, that helps Miami so much that you'd be willing to cut any player that's currently on the roster. Like, it's fine if you want to, or trade away any player. Like, yes. Duncan has too much value. Max has too much value. Dwayne Dedman, Oladipo, whoever you might include in a potential trade scenario, I think they have too much value as it is. It might not be enough, but it's too much as it is to trade for a player like Jae Crowder, who's a little bit older, who's a little bit too streaky, not necessarily a reliable three-point shooter. This is what I talked about while you were out. I just think we're all viewing Jae through this lens of nostalgia because he was such a great part of that deep Miami run during the Orlando bubble. He was phenomenal for 2 series against the Milwaukee Bucks and Indiana Pacers. Everybody kind of forgets that he kind of fell off the map a little bit against the Lakers and obviously against the Celtics too. So I just don't see him being that great an addition where you're willing to say, let's trade player X. Right. And certainly not if that player is Max Strus, who's young, talented, good shooting, has plenty of time to continue to grow, and right now is in a great value contract. And yes, he enters free agency. Who knows what that deal will look like? But that's a question for the offseason. That's not something that you're willing to give up now when you're still looking at a potential title run this year.
Well said. And by the way, also Jae Crowder enters free agency too. So it's not like you're finding a long-term solution for a short-term solution or anything like that. The other part of this deal is it wouldn't just be Max Strus for Jae Crowder. Jae Crowder makes $10.1 million. Max Strus makes $1.8 million. Right. There needs to be extra salary included in that. Based on the numbers, I would assume that if there was ever a framework discussed between Phoenix and Miami, my guess is it was probably Victor Oladipo plus Max Strus for Jae Crowder. So not only, and I agree 100% with what you just said, David, I wouldn't do Strus for Crowder straight up. I wouldn't. Let alone 2 rotation players to get back 1 rotation player. And I know Victor Oladipo is not really a rotation player now because he hasn't played for the Heat this season, but the idea is that he will be at some point. That said, I do think there's a framework here that could work for a potential deal in the future. I wouldn't trade Max Strus. He's untouchable to me, and a Jae Crowder deal. So is Gabe Vincent. Any of these bit players who will be free agents, I think it's worth going into the offseason with them and just trying to figure out something that works. Or if you're ultimately going to trade Max Strus, hypothetically, it's got to be for something better than Jae Crowder. And that's just, again, because he makes so little salary, it's so hard to do. So I just don't see Strus getting dealt.
I wouldn't even at this. I'm picturing our listeners or some potential listeners saying, "Oh, but you don't want to lose him for nothing." He was nothing to begin with. He was an undrafted player that they picked up on a waiver wire, and they've developed him. And we've seen Miami do so consistently that I'm not overly concerned.
You don't want to lose Max Strus. You don't want to lose Max Strus for nothing. If you have any sort of inkling that you're not going to work to re-sign him this offseason, then I would say trade him. But I don't think that that's what the Heat want to do. I think the Heat want to bring back Max Strus and Gabe Vincent. That's sort of my gut feeling. I don't have any reporting around that, but I do think that they're going to work to try to bring both of those guys back. Omer Yurtseven is a different conversation, one we'll have in the next segment. But I do think that I would consider, and I wouldn't even at this point consider trading Duncan Robinson for Jae Crowder. I think Duncan Robinson has been too good this year for Miami, and you need his three-point shooting. It's not enough to just have one three-point shooter in today's NBA. You need multiples of them. Crowder is an okay three-point shooter. He's not Duncan Robinson, okay? And so at this point, the way Duncan has played, I don't think that's on the table. And by the way, Phoenix wasn't, if they were interested in that in the offseason, that deal probably would have already been done. Everybody that wants that deal to be done, the Heat were probably going to have to include a draft pick. I'm not including a draft pick for Jae Crowder, okay? He's a free agent this summer. You want to talk about losing something for nothing, that's losing something for nothing. The Heat have already been down that road with Crowder anyway. I would consider trading Victor Oladipo for Jae Crowder straight up. At this point, I would. I think that's the framework. If you're doing Victor Oladipo plus Strus to get the money kind of close to even for Crowder, my counteroffer would probably be something along the lines of Victor Oladipo and Haywood Highsmith for Jae Crowder. I would consider that. I'm not saying I would do it, but if you really want to have a conversation between Phoenix and Miami, I think it's closer to that than Max Strus. I do believe in Ian Begley's reporting. He's very good. The work he does for SNY, previous to that for ESPN. I think Strus is an and starter, and I think that's the right approach for Miami. Would you do Oladipo for Crowder?
I don't know.
He's got a player option on that second year. You get out of that second year player option. You get a player who's actually healthy down the stretch. Availability versus inavailability. That's kind of where I'm at.
It makes a lot of sense. There's no doubt. It makes a lot of sense. It's just, I'm not sure who helps raise Miami's ceiling more. And I think it's still Oladipo. Like if he comes back, and we're starting to see him at shoot-arounds, he's been doing work with the team, that's fine. I don't know that he's necessarily much closer to a return. They're playing it cautiously. They've been playing it cautiously with Tyler Herro. I think that's fine. I think that's the right approach for a team that in the past has not played things cautiously, and it's hurt some of the players. So having said that, I think Oladipo, if and when he does come back, and I think, again, it's closer than we might think, then I still see him bringing such value as a playmaker, shooter, floor spacer, guy who can attack the rim, play defense, perimeter defense at a high level. That, to me, on paper, seems like a better player than Jae Crowder at this point in his career. I'm just not sure how much more he adds. Again, I think Crowder is a great name, somebody we're familiar with. I just don't know how much he adds to the table.
I think they still have to make some sort of addition. And I think Heat fans might want to just broaden their lens, broaden the scope. Maybe it's another power forward type. I think they need somebody that plays that position. But you're right. I think at the end of the day, they would prefer that Jae Crowder get bought out, and then they could just sign him outright. If a deal was going to be made, it probably would have been made already. Maybe there's something with Oladipo down the line. If the Heat just want to cut, I agree with you, Oladipo ceiling better than Crowder. But if you're just like sick of the injury thing and you're just like, and you don't want to have to deal with that in the second year and that player option.
At the Suns. Sorry, I don't mean to interrupt. I'm just wondering, like, the Suns feel like they're playing hardball here needlessly. Like, if a deal was going to get done, if there was that name that they wanted, it would have been done by now. And nobody's like saying,
well, maybe the Heat weren't willing to put Oladipo on the table until this most recent sort of thing with the knee. I don't know.
I think they're hoping for an injury to like a title contending team, and then saying, okay, now they're desperate. Now they'll make that trade, and we'll get something.
We'll get a first round pick from them or something like that. I think that's exactly what it is. It sounds like Omer Yurtseven is going to be out for much longer than initially expected. So the Heat made an addition to their front court. We'll talk about that next. But first, today's episode of Locked On Heat is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline.net is your number one source for your sports betting, stats, and information and analysis. Get the latest odds and trends for every professional and amateur league out there, from football to basketball to soccer and esports. We've got it all at BetOnline.net. And if you love sports podcasts, you can find those at BetOnline as well. We're always the fastest and easiest way to get your betting fix. So head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more. The Dolphins, 3.5-point favorites over the Cleveland Browns on Sunday. They covered, David, 39-17. They more than covered. You could have gotten in on the action at BetOnline. BetOnline, where the game starts. All right, thank you for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. Omer Yurtseven intends to undergo surgery for his injured left ankle this week, barring a change of heart, according to the Miami Herald. So to prepare for Yurtseven potentially being out until March, the Heat waived Drew Smith from his two-way contract, and then they added center Orlando Robinson to that then vacated two-way spot. David, how big of a deal is Yurtseven's absence? And do you think that Orlando Robinson can make an impact?
I'll answer that for the second part first. No, I don't. I think we're seeing, like, if you look at what Robinson did during his stint with Miami during the preseason or even at Summer League, like, there's talent there. I think there's ability. I think they can continue to grow. He's going to have to really show something tremendous during practice in order for him to stand out and say he is a capable NBA player. And what we've seen from Erik Spoelstra this season is a surprising tightening of the rotation that does not include either Jamal Cain or Nikola Jovic or anybody else. It's kind of on the fringes. So I don't see even a player like Robinson getting significant minutes unless you're talking about Dwayne Dedmon getting hurt at some point, which is always a distinct possibility at this point in his career.
Orlando Robinson is an emergency center, one that they didn't have. Their emergency center before Orlando Robinson, because Omer Yurtseven has been out this entire time, has been Udonis Haslem and Haywood Highsmith and Nikola Jovic playing out of position. Like, they needed an emergency center. Drew Smith was a guard. Jamal Cain is a wing. Orlando Robinson was playing well in their G League with their G League team for 4 games. So they said, you know what? We need an emergency center, a guy who's actually of size of a center. So let's bring in Orlando Robinson. Whatever you want to define impact as, his impact will probably be limited to that. That said, he's 22 years old. He's 6'10", 235 pounds. Because Yurtseven is unavailable, he's already the second biggest guy on the roster behind Dwayne Dedmon. In 4 games in the G League, he's averaging 20 points on 54% shooting, 9.3 rebounds, 2.5 assists and a block, and a steal. Good numbers, G League numbers, sure, where there's not a whole lot of size, because usually size in the G League gets snatched up and ends up in the NBA. But here's Orlando Robinson, size in the G League, playing well, doing what he's got to do, playing the guys in front of him, being efficient overall. And he's a guy who, at least in college at Fresno State, flashed that ability to shoot the three on 105 three-point attempts in his last year at Fresno State, shot 35.2%. He's been a 70% plus free throw shooter for basically his entire career, which is a good indicator of good shooting. So I think there's potential there for Orlando Robinson. If you're looking for sort of, I can't believe I'm saying this, Omer Yurtseven light, Orlando Robinson is kind of that. And look, I'll say this about Yurtseven. It's very unfortunate if he has this, if he does end up doing the procedure on his left ankle. I think we may have already seen the last of Omer Yurtseven in a Heat jersey, because if he doesn't come back until March, that's past the trade deadline. That's way past where Miami can realistically wait to March. If you're talking about trying to experiment with Omer Yurtseven and Bam Adebayo in the front court in March, that is way too late in the regular season to start experimenting. I think the Heat are going to try to find, if they actually do want to move Bam to power forward in some sort of alignments during pockets of games, I think they're going to try to find that guy now, not in March. So I would say that maybe you bring in Orlando Robinson. If he plays well and starts to show out in practice a little bit and does earn some minutes the way that Yurtseven did as a rookie, maybe he does end up sort of replacing Yurtseven.
You think they cut Yurtseven?
Not cut, trade.
who's going to take him if he's injured at this point in his career? Like, I mean,
like a
he
throw
hasn't
in.
done.
Like it's Victor Oladipo and Omer Yurtseven for Jae Crowder. I don't know, like a throw in some sort of the way they sort of offloaded KZ Okpala a year ago.
I suppose, but even then, that was like I think a greater sample. No, maybe not, but
like a fake second round pick, like one of those things. I think that if there's a team that's willing to
wow, that's tough.
March, that's when he's expected to come back. That's way late. And he's a free agent, by the way. Like, it'd be one thing if he had another year on his contract. We went into the season. 3 guys, Gabe Vincent, Max Strus, Omer Yurtseven, were going to be free agents this summer. We already knew that the Heat were not going to bring back all 3. We knew that. Yurtseven's kind of, and it's a shame the way it's happening, but he's sort of already taken himself out of the running because of this injury. I don't know.
I think at this point if I had to say, I don't know that the 2 center alignment is probably going to work. Like, I don't think they're going to actually invest time in it. Like, why was it that they were willing to take those opportunities during the preseason with Yurt and Bam, but not Dwayne, right? Like,
it's a good question. I think it's just because Yurtseven, in their mind, is a little bit more mobile than Dwayne Dedmon, which I think Dwayne Dedmon is more of a front, kind of north-south rim runner kind of guy. Yurtseven's definitely more mobile. Maybe he flashed more in the preseason. Plus, he's younger, and they wanted to try to find out if they wanted to invest in his future. Where Dwayne Dedmon, it's like, all right, this is probably his last NBA contract.
Ooh, you're just delivering some hatchet shots today, man. I thought you were supposed to chill out.
I didn't think that was I didn't think that's a hot take. Dwayne Dedmon's old. He's got a 2-year contract. I don't know.
Yeah,
he's gonna have another one after that. Maybe. Good for him.
He could get another year. Better minimum. Yeah, I guess I could see them. I could see them looking to clear space. Also, I think if I had to say, I think they're more believers in what Yurtseven can potentially provide more than KZ did, and they really wrote out the Okpala experiment for a lot longer than I would have wanted or that I would have expected. I think if he comes back in March and he makes an impact, look, I mean, they did that with Oladipo last year. Like, he didn't get any playing time until March. They were willing to take that chance, and they still re-signed him anyway. I think now you're kind of getting Yurtseven perhaps at a more budget price because then he's more familiar. He's already got injury history, but you've already invested so much time in developing him that maybe you just
you're able to just bring him back on another minimum deal this offseason. Right. You're not going to have to pay him. That's fair. Look, I wasn't trying to report anything. I wasn't trying to make any predictions. I'm just saying, like, if he's not going to be back until March on this expected timetable, again, being reported by the Miami Herald, that's after the trade deadline. There's just a chance that we see the last of Yurtseven in a Heat jersey. That's all I was saying.
Plus, it's more than likely that Anthony Chang is just full of crap anyway. And he has no idea what he's talking about.
I doubt that.
Friend of the program, Anthony
Chang. Very good.
Well, you know what? Speaking of Anthony Chang, he wanted to wish you well and wish you congratulations on your nuptials. Took place over a week ago now. You are a happily married man, at least for a week. You went on honeymoon to your now wife's home country of Colombia.
Yep.
I'm sure that you had a lot of great experiences that you'll share here on the podcast. But being that we are a podcast that has on more than one occasion talked about food items and does so pretty regularly after both wins and losses, I thought it would be a great opportunity for you to give us a top 5 list of the foods you ate during your honeymoon.
Well, luckily for you, I always keep a running list of the top 5 foods I've eaten recently.
That must get exhausting
in my head. It's how I spend most of my time. That and I guess preparing for this podcast. All right, top 5 foods I ate in Colombia. Okay, number 1, the seafood fettuccine. I think it was the 3rd night there. Wonderful restaurant outdoors at this resort that we had the honeymoon at. It's basically just in this mangrove in the city of Baru, which is near Cartagena, where we actually had to fly in via helicopter to get to this place. Wow. It was my first time in a helicopter. Very cool. I'm not going there,
that's for sure. Yeah,
Highly recommend helicopter travel. That was actually really awesome. It took a 2-hour car ride. It turned into a 15-minute helicopter ride, which was amazing. So anyway, took the helicopter to this place, ended up getting this seafood maybe it wasn't. I think it was just shrimp. It was just shrimp. Shrimp fettuccine At first, I was like, fettuccine, really, in Colombia? It's like, am I expecting
Was it
that
like
to be
Italian
awesome?
thing, fettuccine, or just like
No, it was like it was like a pesto cheese thing
that sounds
with
tasty.
it was amazing. I mean, it was highly recommended by the waiter, and we're like, all right, my gut was telling me let's do it. The guy seems to really think it's awesome, and it was best thing I had the entire time. Best thing we had the entire. We shared that and like a salad. The salads were really good too, but didn't make my list.
No.
So seafood fettuccine, it's boring. Seafood fettuccine was number 1. Number 2, this is
Wait,
not.
are you ranking them from your top to your number 5?
I guess.
Oh wow, that's
Yeah.
disappointing. I thought there was like fettuccine. You're already like you shot your
That was
water
the best
already.
thing. No, that was the best thing. No, everything was really good though. It's all close. Number 2 is the paella. Not a surprise. It was awesome. Don't have to.
What is Colombian paella in comparison to like other paellas?
So I don't like. I know like
combination?
a Spanish paella is very specific. It's got like the chorizo in it. Also, there was nothing like no meat items in this one. It was all seafood, which was great because obviously we're right by the water there. So everything was super fresh. Most of my list is seafood. Not a surprise, but it had the mussels. It had octopus. It had 2 different kinds of shrimp, big and little. I guess that's how I'm defining them. Prawns and little shrimp. And then what else was in there? Calamari, but not fried, not like like Olive Garden calamari, like calamari.
It's like steamed within the cooking,
and it was delicious. I'm telling the calamari probably was my favorite bite out of the whole thing. Would have cared for a few more mussels than they gave me, but I'm not gonna complain too much. I know the mussels are the most expensive thing. Maybe it's a supply and demand thing. I don't know. So the paella was number 2. Number 3, again, not a surprise here, but the ceviche was awesome. We had a lot of ceviche. I'm not going to name anything specific. It was just a lot of different kinds. Whatever they brought was awesome every single time. They did serve it one time with these plantain chips, which were also immaculate.
Yeah.
So you just get those 2 together. I'm a big fan of plantain chips in general, but these were like fresh, hot, right out of the oven.
Perfect. Yeah. It's still oily, so it's delicious.
All right, the last 2. This is why I went in this order because the last 2 are the more surprising ones.
Okay.
Number 4. Oh, that's right. Okay, my wife just reminded me of something. The patacones. I forgot about this. Okay, no, I'm gonna have to redo my list. That's gonna be number 3, the patacones. So tostones, but large, like rolled out ones, like big ones.
Yeah.
Like the size of your hand with
stuffed
no,
cups.
No, just flat. But then they gave you like 2 different toppings. I can't remember which one of them were. But one of them was the agado, which I kept saying wrong, and I'm saying wrong right now, and I am being laughed at currently. Agado. Something like that. So it's like a tomato, like a sweet, savory tomato sauce that you would, not spicy. So you put that kind of like a pico de gallo, but better. Put that on top, and that was awesome. And so, yeah, and they were, again, right out of the oven. Secret menu item, by the way, was not on the menu. Just asked if they had tostones, and they said we do, and they brought that to us. All right, so that's my top 4. Number 5, pepperoni pizza.
Whoa.
They made a good one. They just made a good one. Look, it's not Miami slice. It's not New York style pizza. It's nothing like, it's not going to blow your mind. But you're at a resort. Picture this. You're at a resort. You've maybe shared with your newlywed a bottle of Absolute vodka over the course of a day and a half.
I just missed this item right here. This is totally drug influence. Like, this is like, you get the drunchies. Like, anything tastes good. It's the reason Taco Bell is in existence.
This is my experience in my honeymoon, David. That was my 5th favorite thing I had. We ordered this pepperoni pizza, extra well done, at the bar, over watching the sunset, and it was really good. It was I really enjoyed it. Yeah, was I drunk?
It sounds like
it's
it was
possible.
more like a really special moment. It sounds like a special moment. Again, slightly tipsy. The pizza might have been really mediocre, but it's elevated by everything else around it.
Hey, food is an experience. That's what we always say here at Locked On Heat.
That's right.
Thanks again for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. Remember to subscribe to new episodes of Locked On Heat on your favorite podcast app and on YouTube. Ring the bell to get notified as soon as new episodes go up. We will have a recap of Monday night's game against the Phoenix Suns for your next listen. Check out the Locked On Sports Today podcast, the biggest stories of the day, plus instant reactions, big game recaps, and the take of the day. It's available on the Odyssey app, YouTube, wherever you get your podcasts. David, thanks for joining me.
Hey, pepperoni pizza. Why not?
Glad to be back.